Here is a question that trips up almost every new Python developer. You are staring at a function you have never seen before. Maybe it came from a library. Maybe a teammate wrote it. Maybe you wrote it 3 months ago and forgot everything about it. How do you find out what it does without reading every line of its source? Python already has the answer built in. 2 of them, in fact, Docstrings and the help function. And by the end of this video, you will not just understand them. You will have built your own interactive tool that uses them to explore any object in the language. We are building a Python help viewer. It is small, it is practical, and it teaches you one of the most underused skills in Python, how to make code explain itself. Let's get into it. By the time we finish, you will be able to write professional docstrings that follow the official PEP 257 conventions. You will use the help function and the doc attribute to read documentation at runtime. You will understand code introspection and how Python examines its own objects. You will build an interactive command line tool with clean input handling and error recovery. And you will write self-documenting code that your future self will thank you for. No prior experience with any of this is required. If you can write a function and run a script, you are ready. Before we write a single line of the tool, we need to understand the 3 ideas it is built on. These are not abstract. Each one is a real feature you will use for the rest of your Python career. Let's start with docstrings. A docstring is Python's built-in documentation system. It is a string literal placed as the very first statement inside a module, function, class, or method. The moment you put it there, Python does something quietly powerful. It attaches that string to the object as its doc attribute. That is the key idea. A comment written with the hash symbol disappears when the code runs. Python's bytecode compiler ignores it completely, and you can never retrieve it while the program is running. A docstring is different. It stays attached to the object. It is live. You can read it back at any time. Take a look at the example on screen. That little greet function has a triple quoted string sitting right underneath the definition line. That string is the docstring. And notice the last part, where we print greet.doc. Python hands us back the exact documentation we wrote, straight out of the function itself. We did not store it in a separate file. We did not write a comment that gets thrown away. It lives with the code. A few conventions worth locking in now, straight from PEP 257, the official Python guideline for docstrings. Always use triple double quotes, even for a single line, because it makes the docstring easy to expand later. Write the summary as a command. Return the sum, not returns the sum. You are telling the function what to do. For a one-liner, keep the closing quotes on the same line. And for a multi-line docstring, write a one-line summary, then a blank line, then the details. We will follow these exactly when we build our tool. Now let's talk about the help function. If docstrings are how you write documentation, the help function is how you read it. It is Python's interactive documentation viewer. You hand it almost any object, a function, a class, a module, a built-in type, and it finds that object's docstring, formats it nicely, and prints it out for you. Look at what's on screen. We call help on len, and Python prints a clean, formatted description of the len function, its signature, and what it returns. Here is the important part. You did not write that documentation. The Python core developers did, and the help function surfaced it for you on demand. This is how experienced developers explore unfamiliar libraries. They do not memorize every function. They ask Python directly. The help function is the single fastest way to answer the question, what does this thing do, without leaving your editor. The third concept is the one that makes our tool possible, code introspection. Introspection is Python's ability to examine its own objects while the program is running. Our tool is going to let the user type the name of an object as text, for example, the 3 letters that spell len. But those letters, as text, are just a string. They are not the actual len function. We need a way to turn that piece of text into the real object it refers to, so we can pass it to the help function. Python gives us tools for exactly this. In our first version, we will use a simple one to convert a name into the object it points to. Then we will look at a safer, more professional approach, because how you resolve a name from user input matters a great deal once real people start typing into your program. That is the foundation. Documentation that lives with the code, a viewer that reads it back, and introspection that lets us bridge between text and objects. Now let's build. Let's design the tool before we type it. Good tools have a shape you can describe in one breath. The user types the name of a Python object, and we show them its documentation with a menu of common objects to get them started and clean handling when something goes wrong. We will build it in 4 pieces: a module docstring, a data structure of starter objects, a set of focused functions, and a main loop that ties everything together. The first piece is the module docstring. Every file we build starts with documentation describing the whole program. This is the module level docstring, and it is the first thing in the file. Take a look at the top of the file on screen. Before any code runs, there is a triple quoted block describing what the entire program does. One summary line, a blank line, then a short paragraph of detail. Notice it is descriptive but concise. Anyone who opens this file or runs the help function on the module itself immediately understands its purpose. The second piece is the data structure. We give users a starting point with a predefined list of common Python objects. You can see it on screen, a simple list holding the names of familiar built-ins like len, str, int, list, and dict. Here is why that list matters. A new user staring at a blank prompt does not know what to type. This list solves that. It is a small design decision, but it is the difference between a tool that feels helpful and one that feels like homework. And notice the name is in all capitals. That is a signal to anyone reading the code that this is a constant. It does not change while the program runs. The third piece is the core functions. We will write 3 focused functions. Each does one job and does it clearly. The first one shows help for a named object. Look at the function on screen. The first thing I want you to notice is the docstring right under the definition line. It has a 1-line summary, then an args section describing the parameter, then a return section explaining what comes back. This is the standard professional format, and it is exactly what the help function will display if someone inspects our own function later. We are documenting our tool the same way the standard library documents itself. Now look at the body. That's the error handling. And this is where beginner tools usually fall apart. We wrap the lookup in a try block, and then we catch a few specific things. We catch a name error for when the name the user typed does not exist. We catch an attribute error for when the root exists, but the piece after the dot does not, like a method that isn't real. And we finish with a general catch as a safety net for anything unexpected, so the program never crashes and always gives the user a readable message. The thing to take away is that each of those messages tells the user what went wrong in plain language. No stack traces, no jargon. That is defensive programming. Assume input will be messy and fail gracefully every time. Now, a quick honest note about the eval function you may have seen in a lot of beginner tutorials for a job like this. It works, and it is fine for a personal learning tool that only you run. But eval executes whatever text it is given, which makes it genuinely dangerous the moment untrusted input reaches it. So let's look at the professional alternative right now, because I do not want you carrying a risky habit into real projects. On the screen now is a safer version. Instead of eval, this resolve object function looks names up in Python's namespaces directly. Walk through it with me at a high level. It splits the name on any dots, finds the root name in Python's built-ins, and then walks the attributes one at a time until it lands on the object you asked for. So a name like str.upper becomes the real uppercase method, but it never executes arbitrary code the way eval does. This is the version you would ship, and our final tool calls this instead. The second function shows the menu of common objects. Look at it on screen. It prints a numbered menu of our common objects. The one detail worth calling out is that it uses enumerate starting at 1, so the numbering begins at 1, which reads naturally to a human. Enumerate hands us both the position and the item on each pass, so we never have to manage a counter by hand. Clean and readable. The third function is the main loop, and it is the heart of the program. We will look at it in full in a moment. At a high level, it prints a welcome, and then it loops. On every pass through that loop, it reads a line of input, cleans it up, and decides what the user meant: a command, a number, a name, or a request to quit. The fourth piece is the entry point. Look at the very bottom of the file. There is a short 2-line block, the standard pattern that makes this file runnable as a script. It means only run the main function if this file is being executed directly, not if it is imported into another file. It is a small habit that marks the difference between a script and a throwaway. Adopt it early. Our tool handles several kinds of input, and the way it juggles them is worth slowing down on, because this pattern shows up in almost every command line program you will ever write. As you can see on screen, the user can interact in 4 different ways, and our loop handles all of them. First, direct names. Type len or str.upper or dict.get, and we look it up and show its help. This is the primary path. Second, the menu command. Type menu and we print the numbered list of starter objects, perfect for when someone does not know where to begin. Third, numeric selection. After seeing the menu, the user can just type a number. We check whether the input is all digits, convert it to a list position, and show help for that object. And fourth, the quit command. Type quit and the loop breaks cleanly. No forced shutdown, no error, just a graceful exit. Here is the whole loop on screen. Read it top to bottom, and you can see every one of those 4 paths. The empty input check, the quit check, the menu check, the digit check that handles numeric selection, and finally the fall through that treats anything else as an object name to look up. This is the complete decision-making core of the tool. Every one of those paths is guarded. Look at the validation steps on screen. This is how much care goes into simply reading a line of text. We strip the input to remove stray spaces, so len with spaces around it and len without them behave identically. We check for empty input first, so pressing enter by accident gives a gentle nudge rather than an error. We lowercase the input before comparing it to our commands, so quit in any capitalization works. And for numeric input, we validate the range before using it, so a number outside the menu gets a helpful message instead of a crash. This is the quiet, unglamorous work that separates a tool people enjoy from a tool people fight with. Nobody notices good input handling. Everybody notices bad input handling. A few small touches make the whole thing feel considered. A clear welcome message that states in one line exactly what the user can do. Consistent prompts so the user always knows the program is waiting for them, and plain language feedback for every action, including every error. None of these are technically difficult. All of them are the reason the tool feels finished. Let's run it and see the whole thing work. Follow along on screen. First, the basic walkthrough. We start the program and get the welcome message and the prompt. We type len, and the tool prints the full help for the len function, its signature, and a description of what it returns. Then we type str.upper, and now we are exploring a method on a built-in type, so you see the documentation for uppercasing a string. Next we type menu, and the numbered list of common objects appears. And then we just type a number, say 6, and the tool jumps straight to the help for the 6th object on the list. Menu plus numeric selection working together. Now let's go deeper. Watch what happens when I try the built-in types directly. Dict, list, tuple. Each one returns a genuinely useful overview of what that type can do. Then let's explore some methods. List.append, dict.get, string.split. This is how you learn a type's full surface area without ever leaving your terminal. And finally, let me type something wrong on purpose, like a name that does not exist. Watch the tool catch it and respond with a clean message instead of a crash. Here is the real lesson hiding inside this demo. Every time you use this tool, you are practicing the exact skill professional developers use to learn unfamiliar code. They do not memorize libraries, they interrogate them. Your help viewer is a small version of that habit, and you built it yourself. This little tool quietly demonstrates several principles that scale all the way up to large professional code bases. Start with documentation standards. Every function has a proper docstring. The module has one too. We followed PEP 257 throughout. Command style summaries, args and return sections where they add value, triple double quotes everywhere. Someone can run the help function on our own tool and get a clean answer, because we documented it the same way the standard library does. Next, defensive programming. We assumed input would be messy and planned for it. Empty lines, wrong names, invalid syntax, out-of-range numbers. Each has a specific, friendly response. The program is very hard to crash, and that is by design. Then, code organization. Each function does one job. One function shows help, one shows the menu, one runs the loop. When a function has a single responsibility, you can read it, test it, and change it without fear. And finally, safer choices over convenient ones. We started by mentioning eval because it is easy to understand, then replaced it with direct namespace lookups because it is safe. Choosing the safer tool once you understand the risk is a habit that will protect you for your entire career. The techniques in this tiny tool are not toys. They power real software. Think about development tools. API explorers, documentation generators, and interactive debuggers all lean on introspection and docstrings to show developers what code does. You just built a miniature version of that category. Think about educational software. Learning platforms, interactive tutorials, and reference tools use exactly this pattern. Take a name, resolve it, show its documentation, to teach programming from inside a live environment. And think about your own professional workflow. This is the most direct application. Keep this tool around. When you are learning a new library, run it and interrogate the pieces. It is a real, practical way to explore unfamiliar code and refresh your memory of built-in functions, and you will reach for it more than you expect. Before we talk about where to take this next, here is the whole file on screen in order. The module docstring, the import, the common objects list, the 4 functions we wrote, and the entry point at the bottom. Every one of those blocks got its own slide as we built it. So if you want to build along, everything you need is right here on screen. This is how they stack together into one working file. The version we built is a solid foundation. Here is where you take it further, and I genuinely want you to. On the feature side, you could let users save favorite objects to a personal list they can recall later. You could add a search that scans across the documentation of many objects for a keyword. You could export the help text for an object to a file. Or you could expand beyond built-ins by letting users import and explore modules. On the technical side, you could improve the parser so it handles more complex dotted names gracefully. You could add color to the terminal output to make signatures easier to scan. You could rebuild the whole thing with a web interface instead of the command line. Or you could add a plug-in system so users can register their own collections of objects to explore. Pick one. Building it is where the concepts stop being video knowledge and become yours. Let's recap what you walked away with. You learned to write professional docstrings that follow PEP 257. You learned to read documentation at runtime with the help function and the doc attribute. You learned what introspection is and why resolving names safely matters. And you built a real, interactive command line tool with clean input handling and error recovery from an empty file. Here is what I want you to do this week. Run the tool and explore 10 built-in functions you have never looked at. Start adding docstrings to your own functions, even the small ones, and pick one of those extension ideas and build it. If this helped a concept finally click, subscribe so the next build lands in your feed. There is a lot more where this came from. I'll see you in the next one.